All right, everyone. Welcome to the first inaugural episode of the Radical Collective. We are going to be releasing a two-part series here to kind of introduce all of you to our ethos and the work that we have been working on so diligently in the background, but we are ready now to go ahead and share our message with the world because we are on a mission to go ahead and impact and provide as much value as we can in this world. Our Radical Collective is really five men each supporting each other in a collective way, each of us representing one pillar of this frame that we have created. So we've got Mitchell and Colin joining us today. I am Miles. And then we've got Steve and Sam who are joining us through the ether. Thank you, men. So our collective really came through in a very synchronistic way where we actually all have a joined mentor honoring Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. That has allowed us to speak the same language, but we didn't expect this to happen. And the universe really brought us together. And we realize now that we can't keep our conversations just to ourselves longer. Colin is our resourcing and vitality expert. Mitchell is our responsibility and addiction expert. So I actually love to get into the identity piece of things. Sam is our cultural wisdom expert, and Steve really is our refinement expert and just really living the rad life. So we all bring different elements and different flavors to this collective, but our collective wisdom is the thing that really feels unique to us. And we're just excited to get the conversation going. So today we're going to get into actually a conversation we've talked about a lot, which is the modern man's dilemma and what this really means to us and how this is something that needs to be addressed in the world if we want to help heal the masculine presence that is out there and help lead our families in a powerful way and help heal the collective of the world. So we really feel it starts with the man. The man is the frame holder. He's the one that sets the space and holds the container for people. So right now, what is the modern man's dilemma? And really simply, a lot of men don't know who they are. We've grown up being conditioned by society, our teachers, our coaches, our parents, whatever it is. And before we know it, we have a job that we're working to be able to pay our bills, buy a house, maybe we get the car, we have a wife, we have the kids, we do all the things society told us to do. And we have all of the responsibilities that also our forefathers had, providing, protecting, all the things that we have grown up and idealized, the John Waynes of this of society, strong, silent, knight, et cetera, et cetera. You don't share your feelings, you hold everything on your shoulders. But now there's a new responsibility for the modern man, and that's being more involved at home. And this involvement at home has kind of tipped the balance a little bit because it's a little it's difficult for men to know, well, how do I focus on providing and protecting, but also be a present father and a present husband and a present son and a present friend? And how do I really fill all of these roles and wear all these hats when in reality, society's set up in a way where we're more drained than ever? Our energy is at the lowest point and our capacity is at the lowest point it's ever been. So we have more hats than ever to wear, but we have the lowest capability and capacity. So what are the answers? What are the ways that we can actually start to help ourselves get out of this feeling of being trapped? Because a lot of what happens is this dilemma presents us with a situation where we're too deep in life as adults and we realize this is not the thing. We don't like this thing. Things don't feel good. I'm not happy, but I don't know how to shift. And I just feel trapped and stuck. And now I say, you know what? I'm just going to have to make do. This is going to have to be good enough. We accept our fate. We work 30 years. We take 3 weeks off a year. And then when we're retired, we hopefully maybe go do the things we wanted to do. But are we really, truly there? Are we truly present? Are we living life? And that's what the radicals believe in. We want to help people live life first. Very much living a life we don't want to retire from, in fact, right? We want to be able to radicalize our lives and actualize our. That's going to be something that we talk about a lot. What are the things that we can do? And actually, this conversation is perfect to have Colin and Mitchell in because the first two places to start with the modern man's dilemma, we're going to bring them in so they can start into it, is you have to be able to take radical self-responsibility and you need to be able to resource properly so you can have the energy to be able to go ahead and really have the ability and the energy and the capacity to answer the questions of who you are. And then once you're able to answer who you are, then maybe you have the ability to go ahead and be the man you were born to be and become your own man and lead your family in a powerful way and actually radicalize your life and actualize. So I know that was a bit long-winded. I hope you guys were able to keep up with that. Mitchell and Colin, I would love to shift it over to you guys. If you have any specific things you want to say in terms of, where would someone want to start? If they're like, look, I hear you, Miles. I understand that I need to maybe figure out who I am, but that sounds exhausting to me. I don't have the
Hmm.
energy to be able to, but I also have a lot of these habits and these things that I'm aware of that are kind of holding me back, but I'm also feeling a lot of shame or a lot of guilt about them, and I don't want to tell anyone about what these habits are, and I don't know how to release myself from that shame at the same time. So maybe you guys kind of come in and help hold that frame around, what it is that people can do to start taking responsibility and gaining some energy so they can start answering these larger questions.
Mm. Man, I love that. And thank you for the intro. I'm Mitchell, by the way. If it starts where if you want to gain more control in your life, you have to gain control of your body first. It's the first thing that you have. It's the first thing that you've been gifted with. So if you don't have control of your body, you're not going to have control of your life because as within, so without. So that's where I started in my experience, as above, so below, as within, so without. So that's where I would begin to start with, okay, what does my internal nucleus look like before I start adding anything, right? Because life is based in deductive reasoning, deducting the things away, like the burning fat of a steak, to get to the central nucleus of what I want my life to be, rather than like, okay, I got to hire this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. Instead, start central to then pivot outwards.
And Mitchell, that sounds almost like you're talking about insourcing instead of outsourcing, because a lot of us are looking to external pieces to
Right.
give us the puzzle. But really, I love what you said. Like I always say, the way out is in. So the
Mm.
further inward we go, the more we get to know ourselves. That would present us with the way out. But kind of need some energy to do this. So if you're feeling like a zombie all day, where you wake up, you're staring at your phone, you're doom scrolling, or you're looking at the news and whatnot, then you go to work and turn your brain off for 10 hours of the job that you do. Then you go home, you numb yourself a little further, because I think a lot of what the modern man's dilemma is with all these responsibilities and hats that we're wearing, we get ourselves stuck in a pattern where we get overwhelmed. So instead, we just choose them. And I think that's where we
Right.
really need to focus on resourcing, building up that energy. So, Colin, what would you suggest to people if they're like, I this sounds interesting, but what would I do to really start building up my energy? Now, Mitchell's talking about getting back within the body. What does that really mean?
It is about getting back into the body via certain practices, but you want to start with grounding. You want to truly ground back in the body and come into a place where you're associating with life again. You're not disassociating, or some may call it escapism. And so entering back into the body really looks like simple practices like, and no secret here, taking your shoes off and grounding on the earth. That's the first step. And we do this as children, and no secret there that we come into the world in a state of flow and of excitement and joy. We have so many visceral experiences with the environment around us. We touch things, we taste them. I mean, think what a child does in a baby. And it's funny because as adults, it's so easy to tell, young children or kids, like, stop licking that, stop touching that. But we are literally designed by God to interact with our surroundings. And what do we do when we disassociate, when we start to pull away from life around us? We disengage. We stop interacting with the environment around us, first viscerally and then mentally. So we want to get back into the body, just like Mitchell said. And my favorite practices with that is truly touching the earth, and not just with your feet, but then with your hands, whether it's crawling. Once again, like, it's the way we start out. I know Mitchell can speak more to this with his background and beautiful chiropractic work, but these are the things that help myself ground, literally touching the earth, and then also removing any other barriers. And so if you start to think about that, clothing, like, what do? We wear, we put things on, we put casts on our feet, shoes,
Yeah.
we wear mittens, which are socks, so especially in the summertime, like here in the Midwest where we live, I feel so much more grounded, simply put, than just taking my shirt off and allowing the sun to touch my skin, to let my skin breathe. There are such simple things that we can do that you don't even really have to think about. You just start doing them, and you'll begin to come back into your body. And then the beauty of that is that we start to see our energy production come back online, because now
Mm.
at a cellular level, we're starting to rapidly increase the way that we are going through all of our processes, whether it's respiratory, energy production, our mitochondria. We're supporting our biology by coming back into the body. No secret there. Once again, these things they're simple, but they seem to not be easy for modern society and the pace that we're living in these days. So by slowing down, by coming back into our body and getting grounded, especially outside, that's really where we want to be in grounding as much as possible. Taking smoke breaks, take that break outside, take a walk, during your lunch, get out of the office if that's you, working 9 to 5. There's no shame there, but there's ways of implementing these small, simple practices that become easy in time as you're consistent and ground back into your body.
It's a great share, Colin. And so grounding helps us get back into our body. But what are some, I would love you get the principles that us the radicals like to follow in terms of simple hacks that can help you also charge that body a little bit and start resourcing in a way where you're getting yourself back online. Say someone lives in like an urban environment, they're like, I'm not going to go put my feet on the side. I don't really want to do that. What are some of the other things, like whether food or hydration or sunlight, et cetera, that maybe we can start to do? And then as we do that, hopefully that energy is coming back. And then you have a little bit more of that willingness to go ahead and look at the responsibility. Because I know the three of us in our own journeys, we've all struggled with some of those things. Like I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I used to drink alcohol 4 times a week when I was back in college, right? Because I was doing what people told me to do, smoking weed or watching porn or, wanting to gamble, watching sports. Just I used to live watching ESPN. I didn't actually have any availability in my life for me to actually go ahead and think about buying because I was so focused on everybody else. So I think once this energy came back online for me, the curiosity of, well, where are the energy leaks for me, the gains in the drink, right? Where am I having these inputs versus outputs? And then that responsibility piece came where I was like, well, porn starting to disturb me. I'm going to cut that out. I'm not doing that. Alcohol, what's that really doing? And all of a sudden you remove some of these things from your life and you have all this new headspace where you can float around and operate. And within that, you can get connected to your heart. And I think when you get connected to your heart, that's where the real magic is. Then you have now a direct line and channel to your intuition or your highest self. And that's then linking you to God. So you've got this little bit of a loop. I like to call it source, surrender, and self loop. And I think in order to go through this responsibility piece, we also have to implement a little bit more of the feminine within us as men, tap into surrendering to the experiment. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about some of those energy pieces that we love to talk about as well.
Totally. Because you're so numb that for you to make some drastic radical shift to start off is like you don't have the capacity to hold that. All right. You see that all the time with, okay, someone's deeply in addiction with alcohol or just overworking or porn or whatever. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to take an ice bath every single day to like be healthy, right? They start off biohacking or they start off, going to XYZ instead of what can you do within your environment to change your environment, like you just talked about. If you change your environment, at least in my work, you change your entire expression of addiction because your needs are met. And once your needs are met, once your leaks are plugged, then just like I took a little video yesterday or a couple of days ago, there was water dripping into like a little tiny cup, and the cup was like starting to overflow as soon as the water would enter the cup. And I was like, dude, that's what my life was like for like 28 years, or not 28, but 25, 27, however long. But then I just like simply switched the bucket. I got a big orange Home Depot bucket, and I'm not affiliated with Home Depot. And I just dropped it in, and the water is able to just collect. Because what do? You change the space, you change the capacity, you plug the leaks, like you talked about. And because what are we? We're water. Our water reflects other people's water. Like if you're surrounded by people who are energetically on this different wavelength, you're going to mimic their expression. And if you don't have the willpower and the willingness to go against that, then you're going to fall right into suit. Even though within you, like, man, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I up at 12 p.m. like drinking and watching TV or whatever, or watching porn, or you have like every man has a knowing within him because we are an extension of source of God. And it's like, how long do you want to ignore that will depend on how modern you become and how sick you become, because that's what it is. You can't you can't become well adjusted to a sick society, to a sick environment. So environment's first.
That's so good, Mitchell. I'd love to loop Colin in, but I do think it's gonna be important for the two of you to speak about your own unique experiences changing your
Mm,
environment,
mm,
because I want people to know that we're speaking from experience in this scenario. I haven't actually radically changed my environment, at least at the moment yet, but you guys have literally walked that path, and I think it's important to hear that. But Colin, if you have any more vitality pieces you want to get into before, or you just go ahead and share your experience with changing the environment, how that impacts.
I'll hop right in there because that was the answer for me, was moving environments. And I tried to explain this at that time to my community, to my friends. I even had a couple good mentors in my life. I had my life on paper all figured out. It was post college for me, mid 20s, was entering my first jobs, and I had everything at my fingertips that I've been working my whole life for. And it was this moment of crap. Like, I have no energy. I have brain fog. I had all of these symptoms of dis-ease in my body, and all these red flags were going off. And so I had to make my first real, manly decision in my life for myself. I couldn't ask my parents this time, what do I do? And the coolest thing was, to me, what made it a really tough decision, I was offered like a dream job. So I basically was like in the state of dis-ease and total fight or flight. My nervous system was all jacked up. And I knew I had to leave environments. I had to move, as Mitchell was talking about. And at the same time, life presents me sort of a false, kind of a false egoic present that was just wrapped up for me, saying like, which one are you going to choose? Are you going to hold true to your values, which I was moving more towards the time of vitality, which we can get more into, or is it going to be, is it going to be the money? Is it going to be the comforts? What and thank God I chose to turn the job down, tell everybody I'm leaving. And I kid you not, I moved into, speaking of environments, I moved into a safe place, a place of love and refuge, which was my grandparents' house in Columbus, Ohio, here where I'm still at.
mm,
And on paper, it made no sense. I turned down this job. I was starting my real estate career over in Ohio, which meant new license, new classes, new everything, new brokerage. And so again, it was like, why would you do that if you're sick, if you're in a state of disease? But I knew in my heart that an environment change was what I needed, a pattern interrupt in every single facet of my life to truly reset and start over. And yeah, it was so hard. It was so tough. And there were many days where I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I wanted to go back. I wanted to accept that job and tell, a guy that I actually knew pretty well, hey, just kidding. I'll go back and take that job. But I followed my intuition, which is what I teach my clients even today, that intuition is something that you flex and that it grows over time. And the more you ignore your intuition, the more you're ignoring your own true wisdom and innate power. And so as I stepped into a new environment in the Midwest, which ironically is at a higher latitude, much of a more, I'd say, cloudy environment up here, especially in the wintertime, just following my intuition and following my true north was enough to just set me free from a lot of those symptoms just right there. And within the first 5 months, I met my future wife. I was somehow like crushing it in this job. Like, it didn't, on paper, it made no sense, but that's the beauty of life, is we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live on paper. We have to trust our instincts as man, but we have to cultivate those instincts and cultivate our intuition. Because a lot of people will say, well, my intuition led me down this path and I wish I hadn't gone. It's like, for me, it was a relationship with the higher source and getting still and quiet. Like, I think about what do monks do is they ascend into their higher selves. They get still, they get quiet, they go in and they develop and they cultivate. And that's what I had to do. Funny enough, in my grandparents' basement, I had to get quiet and slow down. My nervous system
mhm.
reset. I got out of fight or flight and into this parasympathetic state, which allowed me to start to heal. And so that's where I think we can talk about, more frequencies and almost vibrations, like that healing level that I needed to enter and slow down, get out of the rat race to
Yeah.
heal. So kind of coming full circle, that was an environment change for me. And that was a big boy decision I had to make to step into my manhood. And then bam, there's my future wife. And so that, of course, led into many new seasons for me in this new environment up here in Ohio. And that opened the door for, a family and a move to Maui and stepping into, family ecology and stepping into this collective. Like, I'm so thankful I followed that intuition, and it ushered in, more of an abundance mentality. I was sleeping better. I was eating better. I was making better decisions.
Mm.
All that goes back to what Mitchell said so well about this environment change and what it can do for our lives.
Mitchell, I want you to hop in with your experience. Colin, that was a beautiful share. But one thing I want to highlight for people is you had the willingness to trust yourself. You surrendered to the process. You had the faith that things would work out. You listened to your intuition. But what you really did is you were willing to close the door on the modern man's dilemma that you were in that moment. And you actually opened a new door. And
Good
then you
point.
stepped through that door. You actually walked through it. And then you went into all this brand new space where you could not have predicted what would have been waiting for you in that space. But all these brand new opportunities and synchronicities were waiting for you because you had the willingness to walk through the door. And Mitchell, you always talk about willingness is actually a step above courage. And that's one thing you've taught me, but I would love for you to share as well. Like, you actually moved to an island in the sunny place. Colin moved to cloudy Ohio, but both of them ended up being the radical shift you both needed. So I'd love for you to tell people a little bit about yours as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Willingness is the action of today. Courage is the action of tomorrow. So,
Mhm.
I was tired of living in the hell that I'd created, out of my own demise from bringing my childhood patterns into my professional life, into my 30s. So everything around me was from lack. I had zero abundance because I was giving all my power away. I was giving my seed away on the daily basis. Who I was associating myself with as friends, longtime childhood friends, we all did the same thing, and we just enabled one another out of, oh, it's okay, you're a victim. But within me, I always chose aspects of light. Even the avenue in chiropractic that I went down was very much more vitalistic, very much more esoteric, very much more connecting back to source than any other aspect of school, because school just teaches you nothing. And so all throughout my life, I was always gravitated towards the light, but I never really fully stepped into embodying it for me. And instead, I was giving it away to everyone else, like the mirror of, when you're addicted to pornography, you just give your life away for absolutely nothing. And so I was tired of living a nothing life, all the way from, my relationship with my wife, financially, friendships, everything was just this pit of rock bottom nothing, right? Sounds super dark, sounds super dilemma. And it was the dilemma that so many men go through, and they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to trust, right? Because there's so much information out there. So you then go even more in, right? And that's where I was. And so finally, we ended up gravitating towards associating with the right people, associating with people that were useful for us in our field. I always knew every time we came here to this island, I was like, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm here, but I know that I'm meant to be here because I feel absolutely alive. Our lineage is alive. My daughter is alive. Haishla is alive. We would cross over the plane. Sorry, we would cross over the ocean. As soon as she sees the water, I see her come online, but she melts and she's just like, I'm home. And that feeling never stopped occurring. And so I take full credit and responsibility for even getting us here, because I pushed us to come here, because she comes from a very toxic family environment that she was like, I don't want to go back there. And I was like, I'm being responsible for not only me, but this whole lineage, and that I know we need to go. And I know that there's some work that you need to do there in order to for you to go past where you've been, for us to fully come in union and get married. And she was like, you talk about marriage on the table. She's like, all right, we're going. So we go. And we sold our practice for 4 years in Nashville, where we hit a plateau. We hit a plateau for a reason. We get here, we have this whole even deeper rock bottom because we moved in with the in-laws, and this big hole blowing up, that what we really learned is that who we were living with was just the mirrors of ourselves. It was our shadow selves that we were actually closing the door on. And so there was this whole cutting of the cord that was actually led. All of this has been led by my daughter, and her being the divine compass of our field. And so once we have stepped into that and fully embodying that environment shift, um, just like you talked about, being still in your grandparents' basement. I'm like, I've never been more still in my life. And when we're at our most stillness is when everything arises, right? But now you have the capacity and the bandwidth to be able to collapse time, like Michelle talks about all the time. You're able to now, it doesn't take you 4 years to do that. It takes you 4 days, 4 months, whatever that looks like. But um, we have now set ourselves up for a life of abundance, a life of vitality, a life of purpose together, whereas we're separate and living that life.
And
That's
Mitchell, I want to highlight that was an incredible share, and thank you for your words, letting the audience in on that. You said so many important things, but one of the first ones I noticed was you actually talked about how you took responsibility for the move. So in essence, what you did is you held the frame for your family. And
Mhm.
holding the frame is a concept that we'll talk a lot about over time. So for the audience who's listening, if you don't actually know us, we are all young fathers. We have Colin's got two children at home. I have a son. Mitchell has a daughter. So we're all in our early 30s. We are young fathers. We have women who have empowered us, challenged us in healthy ways, helped us grow beyond our wildest dreams. We've had the right partnership in our union to really help us actualize our potential as men. But it wasn't always this way, at least for me in my experience. I didn't always actually hold the frame. My wife was definitely even questioning, could she even be with me? Because I had such a boundary issue with family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was this element where, as a man, I had to step up in the space of holding the frame and actually expanding my capacity, expanding my frame, and then giving my wife that space to be able to go ahead and paint the canvas, as Michelle says, right? So she had to be able to have the room for her feminine essence to really blossom, etc. So you saw something in Rachel and said, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make this move. We're going to have the willingness to make this because I can see you expanding into something here that you just can't expand otherwise." And
Definitely.
then doing that has been more bountiful and abundant than anything you could have done by staying, which a lot of people will tie their measure of success to what society defines as success. But I think a radical thing that we will help people focus on and realize is that actually success is your own definition. So if you can come up with your own definition of success, then
Mm.
that will be your own measure of what abundance actually feels like to you. So this, to me, is actually a very rich conversation. This feels abundant. Be able to be in a room with men like you and actually talk like this is rich. So regardless of the amount of money, so a lot of people focus, well, how much money do I have in the bank? What kind of
Mhm.
car am I driving? Am I keeping up with the Joneses? Do I have the appearance and all the measures that society told me to value? But in reality, that within themselves, they feel empty, and that emptiness is the thing that drives the dilemma deeper and further. And you go down lower and lower on the level of consciousness, run into anger, the despair, the grief, the shame. And shame
Mm.
is really the bottom. So people are walking around thinking, I am bad, even though they're making $1 million,
Mm.
instead of saying, I did a bad thing, and then, but I think one important thing that you guys would love to hear you expand on is what were the things that really helped you have the willingness to make these moves and actually step out of the dilemma.
Mm.
Curious about, again, intuition. You mentioned that, Colin. That's perfect. But like, there was something subconscious that maybe you didn't even realize. But now that you can
Mm.
peel back and look at it a decade later for you, Colin, and even Mitchell a year later now, like, what were the pieces that actually were in place to give you that willingness to take action, believe in yourself, and have faith that it would work out?
Mm.
Yeah, for me, Miles, it was connecting the dots. Like the dots were there, and I kept seeing things. Again, you can maybe call it these or little things that kept popping up in my field. I didn't have any language for this back then, but it was like I couldn't escape it, if that makes sense. People talk about, oh, I see this like number on the clock all the time, or I see this number all through, or I hear the song a lot. Like people like start to pay attention to these things and it kind of illuminates. And so as I gave, what we focus on expands. And so I started to focus on and pay attention to these desires in my heart. And then I would get some clarity on it. And at first, kind of to your point, it was kind of like, no, I don't have enough in the tank to even make a move. It just doesn't make sense right now. Like, cool, I have this desire to be closer to my family in Columbus. It never really, like, the timeline hadn't intersected. And then it's so funny that when I was presented this like golden egg that would have solved all my financial problems, back down in the South, is when I finally connected the dots and was able to go like to the next stepping stone. Like I've seen my life as a series of stepping stones. So none of them are for naught and none of them are a waste as I look back. Hindsight's 2020 always. But if you see these things as stepping stones, it may not be linear, such as healing as well, but you're on your path. So even back then when I had no language or framework for this stuff, I couldn't escape it. And I was almost spending more energy trying to like run from it than I was just coming to grips with the fact that like, hey, maybe I'm supposed to like step into this and do this. Like maybe I'm supposed to try this on. And so my willing came from this almost inescapable invitation from life to try something new. And I happen to be someone I do enjoy some good change and newness. I'm fine with that. I love a good pattern interrupt here and there because now that I've learned, environment is everything. And as many people say, some say this, many people know now, you cannot heal in the same environment that you get sick in. And it's so true on so many different levels. I think the willingness again came from just this overall surrender to life and realizing I'm not escaping this and my heart is actually coming back on. I feel this. So my body is tired. My brain is tired. My body's weak right now, but my heart knows something that my head is just not getting right now. And I need to start following that heart thing. And so that is what I realized is taking me to some really nice, fun stepping stones. Because as we know, they're not all fun, but they're all for us. Life is for us. It's not against us. It's not happening to us. And as I started to shift that approach as well and understand that, I was like, I get it. Okay. This is good. I may not be having fun right now in my symptoms, but the vitality piece was the gas for the vehicle that I think I was missing. And so as I started to rev my engine up with this gas, with vitality and life force, that's when it started to get really fun again. And that's when the joy came back. And talk about willingness. I think it was even easier as a man to step into things with courage and to have willingness as I rose my levels of vitality, life force, inner fire. And again, that was just staying true to my path.
What I'm hearing is it really sounds like your inner knowing was just not something you could ignore any longer, which is beautiful. You act on that. And Mitchell, if you want to talk to your willingness piece, I'd love to hear that. I think the audience would benefit from that as well. But then after that, I want to like paint the picture of like who this man is that's in the dilemma right now, and then what our stepwise process would be to kind of maybe help him kind of step out of that dilemma. So Mitchell, if you wanted to share a little bit about your own relationship with willingness, how that actually helped you really uproot your life, because a lot of chiropractors would say, hey, I went to school, I got a degree, I did this thing. But maybe you made that decision as a 22-year-old and you didn't actually really know who you are. So now you're 30 years old and you know who you are much clearer and much better, and you have the willingness to take that action. But not everyone would. They would say, no, I got a degree, I've got student debt, because more people than ever have been in debt, right? So I'm a dentist, I'm in $650,000 of debt, kind of a big nut, so I'm curious what your own experience was there.
Well, debt isn't real, but that's a whole other conversation. We can go there later. My willingness.
Maybe not the first episode.
Yeah. Maybe not the first one. Just, I wanted to engage in my little magician there and kind of deflate the room. So my willingness piece came from, I was tired of being tired. I was tired of hitting rock bottom. I would hit rock bottom in my life all the time. I would hit that shame floor every time. I looked at life with new lenses and I was like, okay, having a son or daughter is such a beautiful catalyst because you see your imprint and how it's imprinted onto something and they just mimic you. They mimic your pattern. And once you're just seeing another aspect of yourself. And when I saw how my pattern was being imprinted on Haishla and even my daughter, I was like, okay, that my heart was broken, right? And what do we know about the broken heart? It's the one-way ticket to the divine. And so I finally honored that connection and was like, okay, I have to make a shift. I am making a shift. And so for the thrill of life, to follow life's threads, and the very grand scheme of things, there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes in the greater context, because if but that all depends on if you learn from those mistakes, because life is about failure. Life is about learning. Our mother and fathers are here to fail us, because we need to seek deeper. We need to seek beyond the earth, beyond the world. And all that was going through my mind at the time as I'm like seeing our surroundings. And so, what getting back to your question, what really was the missing link is kind of what you're saying. Having wanting to drop in. You could ask the same question: why do you surf? Why do you skate? For the thrill of riding the waves, like for the thrill of being able to finally just drop in and go for once in your life. Something that Michelle said to me that really fast tracked this process was like, dude, you don't have to learn the hard way anymore. And all men, we think we have to do it hard because there's honor in that. You're a good boy if you put a lot of work in. And like, so really, I was just fucking tired. I was just tired of being tired.
Well,
Seeing
Mitchell,
the imprint.
what I'm saying there is that you made it an active decision to live life and to like
Yeah.
actually experience what living really feels, which a lot of people
Mhm.
don't actually know what living means because they, at a young age, right, we have a certain level of vibrancy that is our birthright, I feel, and we have a birthright of vitality as well. I watch my 2-year-old son walk around. He knows exactly who he is. He hasn't been
Mhm.
conditioned yet, and he also has this boundless life force energy that is not like it doesn't go anywhere. It's sustainable for him. He can actually keep this life force energy. So what happens is as we go through the school system, potentially, I went through the public school system, like you get taught to fit in line, sit in a chair for 8 hours. You start losing a lot of your own natural vibrance as we get more and more sequestered in these clustered little rooms and we sit in our cubicle and at work under these blue lit lights, et cetera, et cetera. We end up losing a lot of our vitality as well. So before you know it, you don't know who you are. You can't possibly remember who you were born to be. But I feel our authenticity is one of the gateways to helping us rediscover who we were born to be. And one of the ways to rediscover to be the fullest expression of self is to start asking yourself questions about your childhood. Start asking yourself questions about who really was that little boy inside me, and what's my relationship with that little boy? Put him in a cage and sequester him, or does he run my entire operating system, or do I just love him? Do I actually love myself? Can you love yourself? Because in my work with my clients, I start to see a lot of these questions are really, am I enough? Do I matter? Do I love myself? It's really fundamental when it gets down to. And a lot of people answer those questions and say no, but they might even be afraid to answer that question because they don't want to hear the answer. Because what would be the amount of work you have to do to really shift that? To go from saying I don't love myself to I do love myself. What do you have to do to make that shift? Is it a lot of work? Is it climbing a mountain? Or can it be an instantaneous move, like you were just saying, Mitchell, where it doesn't have to be that hard? You can just say you love yourself, but then you have to embody. So I think you guys have given yourselves much better intros than I did because you're sharing your experiences so beautifully, which is really nice.
Uh-huh.
One part of my experience that I would like to offer the audience who's listening is I've been very lucky that I have a family business. I became a dentist. I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. I achieved the dream, but where I struggled was I hit a wall where I said, "Well, what now? Is this really it? Is this all I'm going to do?" And that for me was my dilemma. And it was having the willingness to actually pull myself out of the family business lens and say, where do I really fit in this world? And am I allowed to get creative and do something else? And it was only actually
Mm.
when my wife stopped being a dentist and stopped working with the family and started taking care of our son that I had to start holding the frame in a more responsible way. And instead of me looking at business as my ticket out, which is how I
Yeah.
used to be, the better the business did, the better I did. Actually, I flipped it. And it was the better I do, the better the business will be. The more full expression of myself, the better the business will grow.
Mhm.
So a lot of men are like, well, I have no problem spending $20,000 to make my business improve, but they have a lot of trouble spending $5,000 or even $500 on making themselves improve. But that's actually the best investment you can make. And the three of us, and well, the five of us rather, are big, big believers in investing in yourself. You truly are the best investment. I spent over probably $150,000, maybe 200 at this point, over the last 3 to 4 years. Now I'm very fortunate that I had that money to spend it, but I'm also now living paycheck to paycheck because of the amount of belief I have in the investments that I've made. So the reason I'm sharing this is it is important for us to start having the willingness to ask these questions. And if I wasn't willing to ask the question, and then my wife hadn't had a life moment that forced me to actually evaluate these things, I never would have stepped into this space of holding the frame. And then holding the frame allowed me to get creative. And I said, you know what? Instead of looking at my wife as a ticket to get her to go back to work and make more
Mhm.
money, because a lot of men right now, our dilemma is that our wives are working. Our wives are working because society's gotten so expensive. So now we're outsourcing our providing, and the thing we're told to do, we hold shame because our wife has to go to work. We put our kids in daycare. So
Yeah.
now our family unit is weaker. Our family unit doesn't see each other. We don't spend time. Then we come home, we all watch TV, we eat a separate dinner,
Mhm.
and we don't actually foster any connection. So now
True.
the family unit's not providing the energy and the love that we need to be able to connect to our hearts. And
Mm.
also our wives are working, so the house is a mess. We're outsourcing the responsibility of taking care of our kids to our whoever it is that we hire. So in actuality, getting creative, holding the frame and getting creative. What are other ways that I can be generative as a man to give my wife the freedom to do whatever she wants? Now, if she wants to work, that's perfect. If she has a purpose outside of being a mother or being whoever she is, that's perfect. My wife is going through creating a new business, but it took her 3 years of sitting
Mhm.
in an uncomfortable space, of feeling the void of saying, this, like dentistry is not the thing, but actually motherhood's not really the thing either. She loves our son, but it didn't fill her entirely. So now it's creating this other app of more fully expressing herself. I had to hold that frame to give her that freedom, to be able to explore that. That was my job as a man to be able to do that. And I think there is a big piece here where people have to recognize that and have the energy to do it. But if I didn't have the energy, the capacity to do that, there's no chance I'd be doing it. And as well as I've stepped into getting generative and creating a new business, which is my men's coaching business, now all of a sudden it opened up all these new doors and connections that didn't exist beforehand. So I've been following my inner alignment, and now I'm sitting in a room talking to the two of you. And I'm in this collective with the five of us that didn't exist 8 months ago.
Mhm.
That's the beauty and the power of really following your inner alignment and having the willingness to go ahead and do that and leave the dilemma
Mhm.
behind. So
Mhm.
I think we've painted the dilemma fairly well, but pretend you're a 32-year-old man who has a couple of kids at home, maybe worked a job or two, but still hasn't like found the thing. But they're like, ah, but I'm making $100,000. Like I'm just getting by. My wife is going to work. Like I don't really think I can. Like it's cool hearing you guys talk about this, but I don't actually think I can really do this. So you are this guy where you're like, yeah, it's cool. I hear you talking about this, but this doesn't actually apply to my life. Like, what do I do? In that scenario, Colin, do you have anything you would like to share with that man?
Yeah, so if this was me, or if I was working with someone who didn't know where to start, which I do. This is something I go over with my clients. I start with a baseline audit of someone's life, if you will. And I call it the wheel of health. These are 12 areas in our lives, anything from the foods we put in our bodies to how we're spending our time, to our relationships, to how we're sleeping at night, and getting to a place of radical honesty with ourselves of where we're at. Because I think, I talked earlier about how we don't live on paper. However, there's a beautiful place in life to write things down, literally pen to paper, on where we're actually at and what are the things that we actually want. So, first is establishing our outcomes. What do you want in life? Like, what do
Mhm.
you want? I can think of multiple movies where the crux of the crescendo of the movie is one of the characters asking the other characters, like, what do you want? And in that, we all are born with desires, and there's a unique blueprint for all of us. So, in that, we need to get clear with ourselves and honest with what we want. We've got to write that down. And
Mhm.
that may take time for someone. It doesn't mean that you have the answer in the forefront of your brain and you just know everything, you know how to get there. No, no, no. You got to write these things down. We've got to kind of jot some ideas. We got to kind of see where these things intersect. But in general, writing these things down of what we want, where we want to head is crucial. So start there. And then from there, we work backwards. So, how are we doing in these, what I call the arenas of life, which are, as I said earlier, how you're sleeping? How are your relationships? Are you confronting
Mhm.
people and things you need to confront? Like, let's start there first, and then we'll get to where you're trying to go. So, I think again, it's this piece of radical honesty and understanding that we are all holistic beings in nature. We're not robots compartmentalized. All of the
Mhm.
things in our life connect to one another. And the sooner we get that, the sooner we realize that the only way to step forward is to get radically honest and say, I am really, really lacking. I am really crappy in this area. And there's nothing wrong. If that's you, like there's nothing wrong with you if you're sleeping, if your sleep is crap and your relationships are crap. Like, no. It's okay.
Mhm.
That's human experience. Mitchell said it so beautifully earlier. Rock bottom over and over. I was at rock bottom when I moved to Columbus. Like we've all been there. We may be there now, but it's that willingness piece we talked earlier, and then getting radically honest with, okay, here's what I want in life. Now, how are we going to get there? And that's the
Mm.
beautiful journey. That is the honey. That's the sweet nectar of life that if we start to enjoy that process, we fall in love with life again. We fall in love with what's called the hero's journey, which I know our boy Steve is so eloquent in talking about, and why we're all here. We're on the hero's journey. A lot of
Mhm.
uncomfortability in that and a lot of radical honesty in that. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, we have shortcomings, we have certain things, but as we integrate and as we learn to love life again, the spice for life comes back. We can get to where we want to go. We can formulate that willingness and that resolve to heal and to step forward into our true nature and into back into this Garden of Eden where we are supposed to be, where we want to thrive. We're all wanting
Mm.
that, but we have to start at the beginning with, where am I headed? Where do I want to go? And that to me
Mm.
is your starting point trajectory.
That's perfect. So what I'm hearing is that we have outcomes, desires, places we want to go, things we want to move toward, and then we also have this wheel of health. And I actually talk about the wheel of life with my clients, and it's a values-based system. What are the values that we hold near to our heart? How congruent are these values that we actually want present and declare to have in our life versus what old value system did we have that was maybe conditioned within us, or did we not even have a conscious value system at all that we are now operating our current life from? So if we're having an unhappiness in our current life, it's getting really clear on, well, what value system did you perhaps create the current life from? But what is the
Mm,
value system of the man of your dreams? What is the value system of that Garden of Eden? What is the value system of the life you're truly desiring? And
yeah.
then you get clear on that. And now every decision you make after that is made from an intentional place of what your true values are. And you'll have that much more clarity going forward. But also, Mitchell, I know we'll talk about, if you want to expand on it, Mitchell, is you talk about the word inventory, taking inventory. And I believe that's one of the first places where you take your clients. So I take my clients the values. Colin is taking his wheel of health and outcome. You're taking yours the inventory. Maybe it's all different language, but it's the same essential essence. So if you wanted to maybe get into what your take is on inventory, because I think there needs to be that level of radical responsibility to honesty that you won't
Mm.
have the willingness to take action on that without like looking at the inventory and being open and honest with yourself.
Completely. Yeah. I like to use the word inventory because it sucks to do, honestly. And and then at the same time you have to do it. So that's where it's like the rubber really meets the road. And like, okay, if you really want to get to where you want to go and what you want, you have to take inventory of where you are now. You have to go into the basement and explore the basement. It's deep, it's dark, it's cold, it's damp, it's wet, it's filled with cobwebs and spiders. It's all of the things that you deem scary and that you've put off for so long. That's why it's cultivated a whole new life down there. And that's where I take it first because that's the nature of my work is everything is so hidden away. Especially if you're a professional. It's even double down hidden. You have a 2-story basement. And you mentioned, being a chiropractor and you a dentist. It's like what I found is that chiropractors and other health professionals are the ones who are the most in addiction,
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
they have to really shove it down there. And so that's why I coined it inventory because that was a mirror of what I had to do to my own life. I finally chose to go down into the basement and be like, okay, I'm not leaving this basement until I've taken an inventory of everything. And I did not leave that phase for a very long time because I would reach the ceiling and then, nope, not done yet. Not done yet. I would try to skip steps, you know? And so I worked through inventory for a whole month. Whole month we go through it. And I think you could go even longer, you know? But it is a mix of going deep and dark, and then as you go dark, you go light. I talk about outcomes. What do you want your specific outcomes to be? with how you express yourself sexually, with how you express yourself with your wife. You know, for me, it's all about that creative power and coming in together in union, right? That you've been missing for so long.
Yeah, look, so I think we've been talking for maybe almost an hour, so maybe we start landing the plane a little bit for our audience here. But what I love about these shares, and I want to make clear to the audience that we have had this experience that we want to share with you, but we are not coming from a place of actually talking down to you. We don't want any man who's listening to this to feel discouraged or down or feel judged for the life that he may be living. The only reason we feel comfortable speaking about this is we've been in your exact position. And there is no judgment in this. It's actually very much our collective believes in a rising tide floats all boats. You know, the better one man does, the better the world will be, the better we will all be. So this is a collective effort of raising each other up as the true men we're supposed to be. So this is not a judgment place where we're going to cut your legs off and say, well, I'm doing better than you, and we're coming from a place of competition. That's not this at all. This collective is very much, I'm going to help you actually walk this path with me. And then I want you to exceed in every possible way. So another important thing that we all share is we talked about our mentor. We've all had many mentors and guides along the way where we have not walked this path alone. And this path takes consistency, it takes effort, it takes a willingness, and it takes time. Yes, we can collapse time, but for me, my path took 6 years so of the growth journey to be sitting in a room right here, right now, recording our first. That's time. And a lot of people will stop before the fruit of their labor presents. So it's this why. We need a strong why. Why they're showing up and doing this work. And I feel that we talked about it earlier about really living life, experiencing life, feeling true joy and presence, happiness, these things that are elusive because we're all so numb to the real joys of life. That's what the dilemma is in this scenario. As we land this plane, what couple of maybe things would you guys like to leave the audience with that you've taken away from this conversation, or you want to leave them with a lesson?
I like, you know, for me, all this boils down to is purpose and passion. Whereas a lot of men in the world, and specifically I talk about men, is they know nothing about passion because they've never felt it in their life. They've never felt what it means to be alive because they've lived in a life on someone else's terms and someone else's frame. And so here we are shining the light on like, hey, like you can hold your own frame. You can do what you want to do and birth your own purpose and passion. And I love how you said it. None of this comes from me condemning you. I'm coming to you on bended knee as where I have been and sharing my story, and Colin sharing his story, you sharing your story from love at the utmost attention. So
Beautifully said, Bill. Beautifully said. The privilege to be a guide and actually walk this path with others is truly actually a privilege. I use that word intentionally. You know, I think there's a lot of lone wolfing, as one of my first mentors would tell me in my men's group, is like the lone wolf. They're not comfortable sharing their feelings. So even just doing this work means you need to be vulnerable and willing to share your feelings, just even with yourself. The very nature of numbing means you don't even have to hear your own thoughts. So having the willingness to hear your own thoughts and actually share with yourself and then share with others, there takes a level of vulnerability there to lead with an open heart. But leading with an open heart is that connection to God and connection to source that's really going to set you free and help you live that liberated life. That's what we're really at. Purpose, liberation, presence, joy, happiness. Like these sound like big words, but they really can be felt and they can be here right now if we just choose to take action. Colin, I would love to ask you if there's any last words that you would love to leave with the audience here based on the conversation we had today. What would those words be?
It would be that there is the pursuit of health, and then there is a cultivation of vitality. And this is where I come in. I see a lot of this with my clients and people I work with of you can have the best health markers in the world. You can live, try to live to your 180 and yet have zero fire, zero passion, zero purpose, and not truly be showing up in the world. And so at that point, I would just say, what's the point of health and wellness? And sure, taking care of yourself is going to help you come online and cultivate more of the things that you desire and feeling better in life. But if we're not pursuing our purpose and we're not moving more into why we're here and purposefully setting up the life we want to live, what is the reason? Like what are we really doing? And that is where this piece of experiential vitality comes in. This life force that we can experience literally every second. And of course, health has a tie-in. There is certainly, they work hand in hand 100%. But as you guys are saying, and as we land the plane, if I can, lend anybody any piece of advice, it's what turns you on and what fires you up. That is your secret to life and the things that you need to be pressing into more. Just start chewing on that today. What are those things for you? Start doing that more. Start today.
Hey, Colin, one of my mentors would talk about that juice, and what fires you up is greatest energy. And
Mm,
it's a really good clue as to what your purpose is. The things that give you your greatest energy are the things that are actually the very purpose lives. So
yep.
I'll land this here with saying we're all beautifully aligned here. I love the words you're using. So for me, vitality, that life force energy is where we start. Then that leads to vibrancy. That's our feeling alive meter. How magnetic are people feeling your presence? What are you attracting into your life? The way you're presenting and attracting, etc. And then living a purpose-driven life. So vitality leads to vibrancy, which will also lead to living a purpose-driven life. And it's synergistic. They feed each other like a wheel. The more purpose you have, the more vitality you're going to have, right? So it's a very exciting, synergistic, connected piece here that is really, in essence, helping you show up powerfully in the world, which is now going to help you be your own man. And it's going to help you hold the frame in a way that you haven't held it before. You're going to literally expand your body. Your posture is going to change. And yes, you will collapse time and synchronicities will present, and there will be much beauty and happiness and joy in your life because you had the willingness to go ahead and take action, start focusing on some of these pillars that we talked about. So we're deeply honored that you have made it to the end here with us in our inaugural podcast. But this is just part one, so make sure you come back for part number two with Sam and Steve to really dive into what is the radical path, get a little bit more into our ethos and our vision as a collective, and what you could be expecting more of us in the future. So we're deeply honored for you to have joined us, and this is just the beginning. So thank you very much for walking this path with us, and we honor you all.